ZOE as a brand is valued at over 100 million.
Yeah.
What percent of ZOE sales are touched by the podcast?
It's about 40%.
Wow. It's the most shared in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 years running. We put in a CTA that said just over that 1 week, we just saw, if you think of the graph going like this, it just went boom, up like that.
Wow. How do you get so much press for your podcast?
The podcast is its own press engine. What you're providing a journalist is like an article with credibility that's pretty much already written. The thumbnail is the highest point of leverage, right? It's the first thing that people see. Faces really matter.
Okay.
Also, how much you zoom in on the face.
With some clients, you also found having the hand in there.
I know about that one.
Yeah. You spent 2 days with Stephen Bartlett. What did he tell you?
There were two takeaways. One was the thumbnail testing, which was an absolute game changer. The other was this tactic, which was to...
Interesting.
I think the people at Apple were like, holy shit, what is this thing that's spiking on all of our graphs? They reached out to us. You want us to feature you? And I was like, yeah, just feature us everywhere. It's all good.
You weren't begging them anymore.
Nah, it was the other way around.
How are you always number one in the Apple charts?
Just being really straight up, the 80-20 was...
That's amazing. Rich, so excited to have you on, man.
Great to be here.
Yeah, you have built an absolutely incredible content engine podcast, the number one most shared podcast in the UK, and one of the world's top health podcasts in the ZOE podcast. And so what I'd love to do in this episode is just break down for anyone out there who's building a brand, building with content, how they can dominate their industry with a podcast and basically replicate some of the success that you've had with ZOE. To kick us off, to get people excited, can we just talk about some of the achievements of this show? It's the most shared in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 years running.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal.
Apple, yeah.
How many people are you reaching each month?
So with the podcast, it's like 3.5 million, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, so not bad for a branded show.
Yeah, and ZOE as a brand is valued at over 100 million.
Yeah, certainly over 100 million, yeah.
What percent of ZOE sales are touched by the podcast?
It's about 40%.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a lot, and it's an interesting one because anyone who's been in podcasting will know it's like quite hard to measure. It's not a data-rich environment compared to other channels like performance channels. But there've been a few sort of like evolutions in technology, and so it's only been, it's been in the last year where we just got that, we're like, wow. But I do need to be really specific that when I say it's touched by 40% of them, for my performance marketing colleagues, I'm not taking credit for 40% of the sales at all. But yeah, on any given week, the podcast touches about 40% of the sales that happen on that week.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible because I think we're seeing this big shift of creators and celebrities and moving away from TV to podcasting to digital content and connecting directly with their audiences. But actually, maybe the bigger opportunity here is for brands to move to build direct relationships with audiences and their customers. And it just seems there's companies like you that are maybe doing this, and other people in the industry are just not aware of the size and scale and opportunity that you can create from organic content and from creating really rich content that helps out your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a massive opportunity, and too many people are still sleeping on it, luckily.
Can we start at the beginning? How does this podcast come to be?
So I, like you, had a podcast production and marketing company, and we were about, I think, 3 years in, something like that. And on another show that we had, it was a show called Startup Dads, very much did what it said on the tin. And one of the guests was Jonathan Wolf, who was the CEO of ZOE. And then after that, I sent him, I think it was a pretty compelling cold email. And after about 5 follow-ups, he responded. And then once we got the VP of brand on the phone, it was like the easiest conversion ever, because they were very much like, act fast is one of the ZOE values, for better or worse. They were like, let's do it now. So yeah, we got it over the line, and and the rest is history, really. I think at that point, ZOE was a small team. I think it was maybe like under 100 people, certainly. Small marketing team, but had some recognition in the UK already because of there was a kind of thing that happened during COVID, which was the team decided to flip the core product, which is a nutrition app, to track COVID symptoms, just purely to do some good. So that was really cool. And that definitely brought ZOE into the public eye, and also meant they grew a bit of an email list and the brand got a bit more well known. And Tim Spector, who's kind of the figurehead of ZOE, became, much more famous. So that was really good. So that was the kind of context on their side. And I think on my side, I'd done about 20 odd podcasts before. So was just getting to that point in the learning curve of going, do you know what? Pretty good at this now. And so I think it was really fortunate timing. It was definitely a match that was meant to happen at that time. And yeah, it meant that once we got going, I think things, we were effective looking back on it.
If someone wants to start a podcast, then what do those first few things you said at that point? You'd launch 20 podcasts.
Yeah.
So you'd kind of figured out what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
What were the first things that you did? Did you map out a strategy or positioning plan?
So the first thing we did, we would always do creative strategy sessions. So we would really get to know the brand, the audience, and then from that position of understanding, start to make recommendations in terms of a creative strategy for the podcast. So the thing that was really positive at the beginning, and you'll know this from speaking to a load of clients. So it's surprising how many brands that you go into and you say, okay, who's your customer? And people can't explain it in any sort of simple terms. They'll start giving you kind of waffly psychographic or age range, whatever. But you're like, okay, what are they interested in? Who are these people? Just the very plain English, who is your customer? And that's what's most useful, I think, when you're trying to be creative.
Yeah.
But ZOE knew their customer so well. It was incredible. And so armed with that knowledge, we were able to make some, really informed decisions on the route to go down.
Who was the customer?
They were women in their sort of 40s and 50s, affluent, really passionate and invested in improving their health, looking for information to do it more effective. They were and they had the time to do so. So longer form content opportunity there, kind of an obvious one. But they're not experts, and so we needed to be simple. And I think that was the next part. We would always do very kind of business school 101 positioning next to what's already there. And one of the white space opportunities was that everyone doing this well was seeming to be doing it for speaking to other PhDs.
Yeah.
And also having 3-hour-long podcasts.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a glaring, it was beautifully obvious. We were well, obviously ours needs to be under an hour.
Yeah.
And to try and be a grade 8 or lower reading grade. And I'm also a copy nerd. So very much sort of thinking in those terms of how do we outsimplify everything that's there? Because that's where the white space is. So that was one of the things.
Was that one of your principles you would say from the 20 before, is just simplify?
Yeah, I think so. I feel definitely from that. And also maybe just from the world of business and life as well. I think it's a really good one, isn't it?
Yeah. And I guess in that space as well, you've got Huberman. Was Huberman crushing it already?
He was crushing it, yeah.
Who else was crushing it at that time?
Peter Attia.
Attia,
was
yeah.
a big one.
Legend. Yeah, I've met Peter. He's a legend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he is. Yeah, we've had him on since.
Okay. So it was really important to get in, sit down, 2 strategy days.
Yeah.
Who the hell is your customer? Who are we trying to reach with this content?
Yeah.
And absolutely nail that so that we know that every episode we're going to create is going to be for that person.
Yeah, for sure.
And then also just mapping out the space and being quite clear in that Huberman's already crushing it.
Yeah.
He looks awesome. He's got a PhD. He does 3-hour-long pods. We're probably not going to win against him.
Yeah.
And even he's got a tier kind of climbing up behind him, doing the same stuff. That then form the positioning document that I've seen. This famous document.
So simply what we wanted to do was to create the world's most listened to health podcast, which we have got we didn't make the world's biggest one, but we've got pretty far. And doing that by being, more scientifically credible, more accessible, more audience led, and then better executed than anyone in our niche. And that was our North Star and our kind of piece of scripture ultimately. And I want to actually mention that this stuff, I know from doing content for ages, that what I'm talking about here is really zoomed out, and it's stuff that you're all going to have heard before. But I think it's so worth mentioning, and it's this idea that if you do this stuff early on and you get it right, it's one thing that you do early on that makes all the other things easier. And it's more exciting when you're listening to content or you're reading LinkedIn to hear about the tactical, like, little nuggets, and we will get into those. However, this foundational stuff, it makes all other things easier. And so I just am a big believer in investing time early to do those things.
It's also helps guide everything you make.
Yeah.
And then if you ever get lost along the way,
totally,
you've got something you can realign to.
Yeah.
And I think particularly actually when people do look at what other people are doing in particular, they start to completely veer off. I don't think it's a bad thing to highlight this, because most people start with not even having this down. They literally just start on a content format or strategy without actually doing the pre-work.
Yeah.
And that's why what they make just looks a mess and it's not coherent.
Yeah.
And they're chopping and changing each week and month based on what's popular or what they've seen on LinkedIn or Instagram. So it's pretty fundamental. And what's so cool is, when was that made, that document?
I think it was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you can look at it now and be like, actually we pretty much nailed it.
Yeah.
Didn't quite land on the stars.
We didn't beat Huberman, but we did basically everything else.
Let's unpack the different elements there then. Where should we start? Scientifically robust?
Again, I think credibility is one of these things that makes all other things easier. Like, broadly, how people consume content often, if you think about it from the kind of audience lens, is they just go, what's in it for me? That's their first thought. And that would be like, your headline with a promise. And then they say, should I trust it? And then those are the first two questions. And then they say, okay, what's next then? So they're the first sort of two parts in that funnel. And I think, you'll see a lot of stuff on YouTube where we'll say, there'll be like a thumbnail that will grab your attention. And then the start of the headline will be world leading professor in whatever, because your questions are like, what's in it for me? That needs to hit you quick. You're like, oh, that's interesting. And then, should I trust it? And we kind of explain that. And then I think one of the counterintuitive things that we learned over time, as in our niche, was that the episodes that are really big are not actually the ones, they don't have much to do with the fame or the size of the audience of the guest. It's to do with their credibility. And that's coming into play from, when someone sees the headline, but then also, YouTube particularly, the algorithm is dictating how many people are shown the thumbnail by how far through they're listening to it. And so someone who is able to demonstrate that they're really credible early on, and then by talking in, you can tell if someone knows what they're talking about quite quickly once they start speaking, because their coherence is so high, because some of these people have been talking about it for like 25 years. And so then we see the listen through be so high, of the AVD.
Yeah.
And so then they're the ones that take off. And that was so counterintuitive, I think, for a lot of the leadership at ZOE. They were like, wow.
Was that because your initial idea, and I've been there, is like, we should just get a load of celebrities on because people will be interested to hear Davina McCall talk about her health, which they are interested in, but they're very hard to get, and maybe counterintuitively, actually people are more interested to hear from a Harvard professor who's studied this for 20 years.
Yeah, there was definitely some of that going, even though at that point we'd done so many podcasts, kind of had already broken that frame, but still you go, let's try and get a few famous people on. And then you go, that didn't really work.
Did you discover that? And have you since doubled down on it, or is it something that you just knew from the start?
No, even though I feel like maybe I I did kind of know at the start. You kind of have to reprove it to yourself in different contexts, don't you? But in ZOE, yeah, we've definitely doubled down on the credible scientists. And when we've had, when we've had a few other podcasts, we've done like swaps with some quite big podcast hosts in the space, and they're like the worst performing ones. People are like, it's a podcast, I don't care.
But it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the psychology, I guess, of like informational podcasts where you're getting information, it's all about the credibility of the person.
Yeah.
Fame doesn't qualify someone to talk about a health topic.
Exactly, yeah.
Let's touch on the host as well, because one of the things I love is the way that you've got the host, Jonathan, who is not actually, again, famous. He's just the founder of the company. And then you've got Professor Tim Spector. And then you also do this cool thing of bringing in these other in-house experts from the brand, which kind of other characters in the show that you bring on. How has that come to evolve, and how does that work?
Well, firstly, I love how you just put that. That's awesome. So something we guessed early on was that we can't rely on having Jonathan forever. So Jonathan's the CEO of the company. We wondered at some point, might he think, this has been fun, but my time is too valuable to do this at the scale that it's got to. It turned out not to be the case. But we built in, we were like, we need to make sure that there isn't a single point of failure of Jonathan. And like, how can we build a show that's not reliant on the host and is like just got such a strong value proposition, aside from that. And then, I love how you just said, like little characters in the cast, because that's how I think we do well at building brand, because you get to sort of see into the ZOE family and see everyone interact with each other. And we've got on our kind of immediate senior leadership team, and also on the ZOE scientific board, we've got these incredible experts, and they really are like the top people in their field. And so they kind of rotate in, and when they've got some niche expertise on something, we'll bring that in. And it's another bit on the credibility piece. So every now and then we'll have a guest who we think is awesome and we think they know what they're talking about. However, we're about scientific rigor. And, I'm very much like, if you do something for 20 years and no one gives you a diploma for it, that's exactly the same either way. I don't care. But like, there is that sort of scientific angle where it's saying, which is very at odds to my beliefs actually in this. So where you say, if you followed this method and gone through this path that's been kind of built on historically by many people before you, then that has its own value, obviously. So when we feel like, this person's amazing, however, they're not quite clearly as credible as, the high bar that we would somehow set in terms of like scientific rigor. And if we have someone that can fill that gap, then we'll bring them in and they can support, and that delivers on this whole part of our mission, which is being scientifically credible.
Quick one. If you're enjoying this episode, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us in ways that you wouldn't believe in getting new guests and sharing more playbooks behind the world's best creators, entrepreneurs, and marketers. So if you're enjoying the episode, make sure you're subscribed. It really makes a difference. It also very much reminds me, and I think any brand who's not doing this is just sleeping on a trick, which is basically, this is like the Steve Jobs Apple keynote playbook, where he then brings in, the head of iPhone, and then that expert explains the product, and then we bring in the head of hardware, and they're clearly like, super knowledgeable on that one product, and they've spent years crafting it and building it. And in those like original Apple keynotes, they're just highlighting all that expertise within the brand, and humanizing it and putting faces to it. So I think that's the other really nice thing about having that suite of experts that you're bringing up, and it's kind of like an easy way of doing what Nike did with their athletes. Traditionally, we just put them in ads, but now you're bringing them onto a podcast, to introduce them to your customer base and build that brand association.
Yeah, I think you're so right, and that there's something really fundamental in psychology-wise where you think there's more belief in, you're like, this guy's showing me, and then there's like, this guy's backing him up. There's like there's more belief, right? The second a few people are saying something, you tend to believe and trust it more, I think.
Yeah. It's like the Avengers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about accessibility.
Yeah.
What makes this show accessible? Is it just the format?
Yeah. So there's a few bits to it. So I think, all of these in this really short positioning statement, they all kind of cascade into tactics that we have stuck with. One thing that we wanted to do was keep effectively like the reading grade low. So we keep things simple, where everyone else in this, or a lot of the people that are succeeding here are doing quite the opposite. Like they're very, very complicated. We do our absolute best to keep it simple. You'll notice Jonathan will do things like he's very good at, from years of being a manager, I think actually beforehand, from like playing things back, and he'll be like, okay, so to summarize, play it back really simply so everyone can get it. And, it's brilliant. He's a great kind of active listener to be able to do that so effectively. So that's one of the things. The other was just, as I mentioned earlier, we're under an hour.
Yeah.
And so that's more accessible, right? More people have an hour, 45 minutes than have 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, and it was one of those ones where there was clearly a gap, and it was like a nice sort of person fit with it, was that there was no one in our space really using storytelling super intentionally. And so when you listen to the opening of each of our audio podcasts, so actually something we'll maybe get into, the audio and the video ones have completely different intros. And the audio one, it uses storytelling. There's a couple where we've, it's sound designed. We obsess for a very, very long time over these audio intros. There's one where you'll see, I think we had Glucose Goddess on, and we painted a picture of the journey for her discovering this glucose monitor and what that was showing her about her health with, whilst in working in a company in Silicon Valley. And there was Foley sound and all of that. So no one's doing that in the health space. It's really out there. But that makes it accessible. Everybody loves storytelling. And so we were like, let's do that. That's different. And it really differentiated us, and it makes it more accessible. So I think they're the key plays under that one.
Yeah. Audience led, how does that dictate your content?
Yeah. So first one being that, ZOE knew their customer. So everything was built around that. And then I guess the more tactical things that people are probably going to be more interested in is like, we actually every single week, we put out questions on YouTube community and on Instagram. And we say, hey, we're doing a podcast about this with this guest in a while. What are you guys most interested in? And typically there'll be one question that sticks out above all of the other ones, just quite obviously. So as the podcast kicks off, Jonathan will often kind of dangle this question, but not answer it. And so he'll say, and everybody who wrote in was super interested in cancer screening, and we're going to get into that. But first, let's just talk about what this thing is, for example. And that's, signposting. It's classic, right? But it's data-driven, audience-led signposting. And so the fact that they know that will be answered later keeps them sticking around. And sometimes, like if we answer it right at the end, which is quite common, we'll sort of signpost again, like 2/3 of the way through.
What about actually coming up with the different episodes and different topics you're going to cover? Is that how do you determine that your audience is interested in those topics and those episodes? Yeah,
so we're very lucky in that we have a hell of a lot of data points, as you can imagine. So it's a bit of a mix of things, but we do, your classic YouTube strategy stuff, because you've got to think of the different objectives that we have, right? You've kind of got awareness, trust, and conversion in terms of the final one. So we're a bit different. If we were just making I think a lot of people are just saying, what's the biggest episode? We do that for a portion, but we also need to think about what's the thing that's going to bring someone along the journey to trust us to then eventually buy our product. And then very, very rarely, once, twice a year, we'll do one where we're actually kind of selling a bit quite hard. And so, to dig into those a little bit, I guess the trust ones are often the questions that our customers are asking. So we're taking the time to really answer those questions, and people feel reciprocal from that and appreciate the level of effort and rigor that we go into doing that. Awareness, we're taking signals from social and diving into YouTube strategy a lot. vidIQ is the tool that we use, and if you use that one as well. But
so you're looking for outliers on other channels in your niche, and just keeping a monitor on that every month to see what are the topics that are really capturing people's imagination.
Exactly. And then we've got this thing called ZOE Academy, which is basically SEO articles. And again, it's played out well actually in this new era of AI messing with SEO. Basically, you want to just try and do really high trust stuff. And luckily, that's what we've been doing for ages. And so it still works. But anyway, we have a lot of data coming in to see what are the things that are popping off on there, and making sure that we're kind of covering that in the podcast as well.
So that's just play that back for me. That is a internal product, or
no? It's a section of the website.
Oh, right, okay.
And if you can go on our website and you'll see that you can go on an academy and you can basically learn everything that you could possibly want to know about health and nutrition is all there from very credible source, peer reviewed research.
Cool. So you see what people are looking for on there.
Yeah, exactly.
And then create episodes around it.
So basically, we had this machine that was just making that stuff. This was actually pre our, because we got acquired by ZOE and went in kind of full time. But pre that happening, actually, so I don't know exactly what their strategy was to make the content. I have a feeling it was basically just like make a load of content.
Yeah.
And then with a pretty good idea of what might work. But then that's cool because you can then use that to look at what's performing. So we've got our own kind of bespoke data source there, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think about splitting those out? So, 30% of episodes are around awareness building, big topics, wide, 30% trust building, and 30% conversion, or do you just go with whatever's in the pipeline?
We basically do. It's not like I'm obsessive. So we've got a lot of frameworks for a lot of things, but that isn't one with the podcast where I obsess on too much, because we actually have that for the social channels.
Yeah.
And that's like pretty cut and dry and measured. But with podcasts, obviously you've got guests that you've been trying to get for ages, and say one of them's like, hey, I'm in the UK or whatever. And then you've got to allow for, it's messy, right? It involves people. So I think it would be easy to get overly process driven in that regard. And that's one where we don't do, but yeah.
What about the last bit of that mission statement?
Yeah.
Well executed.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
We're obsessed on making the best product that we can possibly make, down to the absolute details. And I think is very much in line with what Stephen Bartlett talks about as well, I think, and it all kind of tracks back to this idea of continuous improvement. So the whole thing is a system. And I actually think for anyone listening to this who manages people and does anything that's at all repetitive, this is really important as well for another reason. So if you do something every week and you want to realize continuous improvement, you kind of need to systemize to optimize. If you're kind of making up how you get to whatever your objective is every single week, you're never truly going to optimize because you're not going to remember. So we've kind of got the whole thing mapped out in what we call our podcast OS. It's kind of a set of processes that just takes you the whole way through. And then we jump back into those and we do process syncs. So if something's not working, which at this point doesn't really happen, but when, some change will happen. But if there's been a problem in something, we'll all jump on, all stakeholders at once, really quick 15 minutes. And we'll say, we'll look at the process and be like, where did it fall down? Almost like code. And we'll say, fix it. Everyone feels bought in. And I think then, as I say, for anyone managing people, when you do something repetitive, people want to see a trajectory, they want to grow and they want to move forward towards something. And when you do something week on week, you need to make sure that you're providing that. And I think if you just are stagnant, then people are just going to be unhappy. So kind of a little manager thing, if anyone's working with anyone else, probably quite useful to know. The
stakes and the level of detail that goes into creating these organic content engines that I see with podcasts, with creators, with entrepreneurs who are doing this, they are all machines.
Yeah.
And like you say, I love actually thinking about it like it's a software product with, 20 features and you might start off with something quite basic, and over time you then go in and add new features and upgrade the processes. And, we can talk about some of the features and the hacks and things that you've developed and built, but it just means that over time you're creating this like software, right? It just gets better and better, more optimized.
Yeah.
And people can see the results improving, and you go into each little data point, and then you look back, you're like, wow, what the hell have we created? This is a monster.
It's wild. Like when you look back on, you're adding these little things week on week. And then sometimes when you track back on like some of the templates, maybe like looking back at old versions of templates and being like, for example, in our briefing process, being like, wow, how did we get from here to there over like this amount of time? You don't even notice yourself doing it. It's just these incremental compounding gains.
We've just, a producer's just joined us from Modern Wisdom with Chris Williamson.
Yeah.
And he was showing us the evolution of the thumbnails.
Okay, cool.
And we literally scrolled back through 5 years of thumbnails and the upgrades over time. And it's just incredible. The level of how bad they were.
Yeah.
To like gradually getting more optimized to where they are now, where they're like absolutely perfect every time, but still evolving and improving. Let's get into the launch and distribution, because, you really built a strategy for this show and put a lot of thought into what it was going to look like. You went away and created those first few episodes, and then you launch it.
Yeah.
Was it pretty successful from day one? I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Why do you think that was? What were the things that you did?
Just being really straight up, the 80-20 was the email list. So we had this big email list that had been building over time. And this was an audio first strategy at the time. We were most interested in plays on Apple. YouTube was like an afterthought at that time. I've since been converted, but at the time I was a bit of an audio purist. And so what we did was we sort of talk about it in terms of change velocity. So what Apple is looking for is how many subscribers did you gain over I think it's a 48-hour period. That's what's dictating your chart position. And so email lists and audio podcasts are like a match made in heaven, because obviously you send the email pretty much all at the same time. And so people are tending to open it and listen in a bit of a spike in like a, compressed time period. And then what happens is you shoot to the top of a chart if your, email list is good, a good size. And then you're then exposed to more people who discover your show. And then this all tracks back to the whole positioning piece of saying, how do we make this product, as in this podcast, delightful? Because then if that's true, then that little bump of exposure you get is compounds all of this, sharing and picking up new people who then stay. And so it was up and to the right from day one. And it just kind of kept going that way. So I think that was a big part of it. And then I think basically
let's just wait there. Let's play that back for someone.
Cool. Yeah.
So to chart, the things that drive charts, podcast charts, is it number of new follows in 24 hours?
Yeah.
And then is it number of listens in 24 hours?
So it's a little bit of like Apple whispering, but my assumption, you can tell me what your one is, or my belief is that I think it's new subscribers in a 48-hour period, and potentially, and listeners may or may not be accounted into that calculation, but to a lesser extent than subscribers. So Apple are trying to sort of reach like, how hot is this? What's your opinion? Would it be the same?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I tend to think of it as 24 hours.
Okay.
Just to try and drive as much as possible in that period.
That's smart, actually.
But I think that's pretty concrete. And then on Apple and Spotify, you can obviously try and get featured as well. And Spotify are bringing some features that may be a bit more organic than that. Yeah. But I think the old school method it still holds true, which is just driving as many follows as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think just to add to that, we did that across all of our other channels as well. So essentially when I went in, Zoe let me, take control of a big portion of the marketing team and just kind of say, right, military precision, let's get everything to happen at the same time and just, try and create a thunderclap of noise, and for that all to drive towards Apple. So that was the strategy basically.
Quick one, if you're enjoying this episode with Rich, I'm going to put a breakdown of all of his frameworks, including links to the documents that we discussed in my next newsletter. Make sure you're subscribed at the link in the description. Now, let's get back into the episode with Rich. And were you doing that every week?
Yeah.
When a new episode came out on an ongoing basis?
Yeah. So once we'd done a few reps, same thing, right? We got the whole thing systemized and just said onwards.
Okay, so that's a pretty phenomenal tactic, which is you've got this unfair advantage, which is because you're a e-commerce company, you've got this big email list, and you can drive subscribers to the podcast from that with this rich content, which is not selling, it's actually providing a lot of value to them. Yeah. So it's a no-brainer to use that asset. Was there anything else on launch that just really went well for you, or a tactic that you'd recommend to others?
Yeah, really early on what happened was, due to the fact that we were so successful, I think the people at Apple were like, holy shit, what is this thing that's spiking on all of our graphs? And so they reached out to us, and they kind of knew, they actually knew me through other shows previously when we've been pitching to them. And they were like, so hey, what's up? You want us to feature feature in the carousel? Do you want us to do and I was like, yeah, just feature us everywhere. It's all good, So it was like, it was so funny for the things to be reversed there.
You weren't begging them anymore.
Nah, it was the other way around. They were like, this is awesome for our platform. And then the second thing that happened was.
So that's the advantage really of like building a relationship or prioritizing one platform.
Yeah, totally. And then I think the other thing that was really interesting that happened super early on was, so we had press monitoring happening, and almost from the start, there would be stuff coming in and the Slack would be like, hey, look at this. This journalist has just written up, we didn't do anything. They've just written up the podcast and it's in the Telegraph. And the way that they were doing it, so, it became so big and it was kind of everywhere. And I feel like a lot of journos listen to podcasts and they were like, oh, wow, this is obviously the go-to health podcast. And so, and we were also releasing the transcripts.
Yeah.
And so what you're providing a journalist is like an article with credibility that's pretty much already written.
Yeah.
So they can just listen every week and be like, cool. And we'd also we'd link to the transcript. And so they could just jump in, pull it into an article. Health is a high performance topic. So it's in their interest just to lift the whole thing and then write articles. And so it happens on a weekly basis still to this day, that the podcast is its own press engine. And so I think...
What other articles are they writing? It's just like this health trend, or this thing explained, or...
It's like world leading expert in dietary fat says you need to eat more healthy fats, not less.
Right.
Or something like that, so it's writing itself, basically.
Interesting. But it's just there. It's easy for them to pick. They probably stick it in ChatGPT now and just
probably
turn it into an article.
I think the lesson and the tactic there, not that we sort of had thought of this before it happened, but it just was that obviously making the transcript really accessible makes their life way easier. And also, again, it ties back to leading with credibility. So they want to make sure that they're sharing something that's legit, and so that's what we're about as well. And so they've got the easiness of lifting the whole thing, and then they've got pretty good instinct that it's credible. So it's great. And that happens all the time. It's just feeding the machine.
None of this works though if the content and the podcast is not really good product.
Exactly.
You do intros, you have these quick fire questions at the start. Yeah. I know you think about the slippery slope.
Yeah.
These kind of concepts to gain retention and create open loops and things like that, and increase viewer satisfaction, listener satisfaction. Yeah. What would be the 80-20 of that?
This is the idea that basically you win buy-in through sort of sunk costs. So if you hit someone you need to be really interesting initially. And then with every minute that things pass, like you've got people bought in, and they're more likely to stick around for the course of the episode. So I think that's a really good fundamental, right? So that then you're just thinking, my headline needs to be amazing. The first 5 seconds of my podcast need to be like bang on and, demonstrate exactly what value people are going to get. And then that first 5 minutes is key. And then, just really thinking of this sort of slope of of like obsession with excellence that's kind of weighted towards the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
And then so digging into some of the other ones. So the quick fire questions and signposting. So signposting I mentioned before. And then we do these quick fire questions, which are another form of signposting. So what we'll do is we'll, again, informed by what people are interested in, we'll ask these questions that you can only say yes or no to. And that is implicitly like, I need to know more.
Well, I've watched the like cold therapy, ice baths and saunas.
Yeah.
I've watched that one. And so an example would be the questions are ice baths good for you? Is it good for your fertility?
Yeah.
Like a bunch of questions around that trend.
Yeah.
And they're all like require a very short answer, right? It's like yes, no, maybe.
Exactly. And often you'll get someone response to be like, no. And then you're like, oh, there's a story there, there's tension there.
Yeah.
And Jonathan will go, okay, well, we'll dig into that.
Yeah.
And so, just in that one response of no, you're like, there's more. There's more coming. And so that's a retention play for sure.
Both your intro and your quickfire questions, they do a great job of just speed to value.
Absolutely.
And a sense of, I'm going to get value from this show and winning that trust very quickly. Yeah. So with the ice bath and sauna one, I quickly get 6-7 questions answered. You create open loops because I don't get the full context.
Yeah.
And it creates more questions, but I get a sense of like, I've quickly got some questions answered and I'm not waiting for someone to get into loads of value or give long-winded answers to something. The trust bar in me is pretty full and I'm feeling pretty content and I probably am willing to wait 5 minutes before I get my next full bar of trust.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I think, again, all under this slippery slope tactic, or actually it's probably not a tactic, is it? This slippery slope approach that we controversially have different audio and video intros, which has its own downsides. Actually, it's annoying for like Spotify and stuff like that.
Yeah,
we just really believe that the experience needs to be different in each of those contexts, and we're not willing to make that trade off. And we luckily are in a position to be able to do the extra work to do.
So what's the core difference there?
Yeah, they're totally different actually. So if you watch one of the videos, it's like a kind of, your classic kind of Stephen Bartlett style intro.
Yeah.
And then the audio intro is completely different. It's scripted storytelling with like lovely sound design. It's kind of longer. It's like slower paced, and it's really nice. And we're not willing to to change that.
And why is that? Is that just because you think it's a better experience on each platform to go that way?
Yeah, I think honestly that style of trailer for YouTube in audio it just sucks really.
Yeah, because the effects don't transfer as well, do they?
No. And it's weird without it's just not optimal at all.
Yeah. The other thing is your audio listeners are probably coming back every week.
Yeah. They're more valuable.
They're probably loyal and they've probably been listening to the show for a while. So they probably don't need the kind of maybe slightly more over the top stuff, which is more about grabbing attention quickly.
Yeah.
They're less in that mode of needing to be sold to.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing that people have got to contend with, but it's really tough to do, right? That's expensive.
It's expensive, yeah. Although you could argue, you just reminded me of something that's maybe quite an interesting insight, that we think it ROIs because I've got an amazing analytics team at ZOE who did some like really deep digging, and we believe that an audio listener for us is actually worth about 3 times that of a YouTube listener.
Interesting.
In terms of converting to actually buying the product.
Interesting.
So it kind of makes sense when you think in those terms to not make trade-offs for the audio, for video.
But do you think your audience discovers you through YouTube and then comes to the audio?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So we have a lot of conversation, like it's a bit more of an art than a science, right? Trying to understand the full funnel of everyone. You can't really, it's not super easy all the time. Actually, if someone is like, I run a company that makes it easy, or I know exactly how to do that, please tell us.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, we have a lot of conversations with listeners, and a lot of them come across it on YouTube, and they'll watch like maybe one or two, and then they'll go dig it out on audio because it's just more convenient. And I think a lot of the people that are in our profile, they're more of your long-term audio listeners. They do it like, again, we've actually done all the research, customer interviews and stuff to see, and surveys to see where people are listening. A lot of people are listening while driving, obviously. I think number one is while driving, closely followed by cooking, and then followed not too far down by gardening.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. So in all of those contexts, video is just suboptimal.
Yeah.
But you do need to find them in the first place, and a lot of them do come through from YouTube. So
what's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying this episode. I'd love to grow this show, and I know that this episode can help someone that you know. So if you're enjoying this episode and you think it could be useful for someone that you know or in your network, then please just take out WhatsApp right now and send them it. Hopefully, it can help someone that you know. It really helps us grow the show, and it really helps you help someone out. So it's a win-win. Now, let's get back into this week's episode. Yeah. What would be the split of like YouTube audience versus audio audience? Would it be 50-50, or is it more like...
It's about 60-40 audio.
60-40 audio. And your age of listener?
Yeah, it's the dominant age is like 35 to 55.
35 to 55. So they are probably more likely Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, and then Apple Podcasts totally dominates.
Yeah, because when they go to type podcast on their phone, Apple Podcasts comes up first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know how unique that is. Been ages since I made another show. I don't know if you experienced that Apple
I think
is
Spotify
like the dominant
is young.
one, or is Spotify really catching up now?
Spotify is a big fit for the younger shows, definitely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we see. Apple is like older audiences.
Right. Okay.
Spotify younger.
Yeah.
And YouTube is huge for the TV audience, people watching on TV.
Yeah.
And for discovery, like you say.
Yeah.
And then they'll probably discover it there, and then or on social, and then come across to listen to the rest of it on their drive or their commute or
we definitely see the odd outlier, which is quite interesting, where we'll get, say we do an episode that's of interest to an older audience, we'll see like a massive outlier that's at, I don't know if it's 65 upwards or something on YouTube. I can't remember exactly what the age range is, but the oldest age range, they're all watching it on TVs. And because of they're older, I think the sort of pain point effectively is more acute, and they're watching it on TV, probably in the background somewhere. We sometimes get the odd outlier off that. It's kind of interesting, I guess.
Yeah. What have been the other big unlocks? I think sharing, it's the number one most shared show in the UK. How does that come to be? Is it by accident, or do you engineer that?
Yeah, so there's something really interesting here, right? So, when you launch a show, I think something everyone always does is say, all right, we'll put in a CTA that says subscribe on wherever and share with a friend.
Yeah.
So we didn't do that for ages because Jonathan, the CEO, was like, no, this is pure brand. It's all value. We're not making any requests.
Yeah.
It's just give. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Fine. Let's do that. And so we did that for like ages. I think it was like maybe 9 months or so.
Yeah.
So we hadn't asked for anything. And then I persuaded him, or for some reason he changed his mind. And so we put in a CTA that said, if you've got value from this show, please share it with a friend. Basically, that was it. And honestly, it was like a cliff. And to have a data set of that size and not ask anything until quite late is pretty rare, I think. So it's a pretty cool insight. So just over that 1 week, we just saw, if you think of the graph going like this, it just went boom,
hockey stick
up like that. And then, and then I think it sort of steepened for a bit afterwards. So ask people to share and they will. It's wild, but people do stuff when asked, especially when you're given loads of value.
Where do your CTAs come in? Do you have, again, like a formula? So we've got 4 CTAs per show.
Yeah.
They're at 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%.
Yeah.
Like, how do you position them?
Yeah, so I think a really interesting piece on this is, and shout out to Sam actually, at ZOE who did this bit of research. Basically, we need to deliver on value just before asking for something. And this is actually like known by psychologists, that if you basically give someone something and then you ask just afterwards, the amount of stuff that they will give you or their likelihood of saying yes just skyrockets. There's like a famous experiment with a can of Coke in a doctor's surgery, if anyone's interested in that kind of stuff. But basically what we worked out was if we deliver on something in a really sort of punchy, short way, and then we ask, our conversion from, in this case, view to subscriber, which we measure, just shot up. And so what it specifically is, the final quickfire question is so Jonathan says, you have a whole sentence for this one. And then he asks the question. But just before the episode starts, we basically say, right, we're going to give you we're going to say you have one sentence for this one, but you have to answer in one sentence. And like, we're not messing around because, and here's what, we'll explain to him. Basically, it leads for more people to subscribe. And the reason is that we're making a prompt all in a short space of time that they won't have forgotten in the time that they hear the CTA.
Yeah.
So we're saying it's going to be a one sentence answer. The guest then delivers a one sentence answer. So we made a promise, we delivered on the promise. So when we ask, we're in a stronger position.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy that that's measurable. It's significant and measurable on YouTube.
Wow.
Subs to views to subs to view.
Wow. So that's when you ask them to subscribe to the channel.
Exactly. Yeah.
So straight after that,
yeah,
value question has been delivered.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Make promises.
And do you do that? What CTAs do you actually do in your episodes? Is it a follow at the start?
Yeah.
Because that's nice and easy.
Yeah.
And then do you have like ad slots and then a share thing at the end when they've got to the end of the episode? Like, how do you think about that?
So we've got the CTA, subscribe CTA at the beginning, a buy the product CTA, because we think like there's a few different theories behind why we do that, which maybe aren't that interesting, maybe they are. But basically, you do an easy one first.
Yeah. And
so then someone said yes to one thing potentially.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is arguably further in, they've been engaging for longer, then you ask for something harder, which is like to buy something. So you'll put that 2/3 of the way through, and then we do a similar one at the end in the outro. On audio, we do that. On YouTube, we actually do an abrupt ending because that's better for retention and stuff. So we think just abrupt ending.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we do, and I would definitely recommend this to people, is we swap between lead magnet and selling. And actually, we should probably do more lead magnets, honestly, because the giving someone something for free converts incredibly high. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And then you can get them in the email funnel, and then you can nudge them more. And email is like a great way to sell stuff.
Yeah.
So we mix it in with that. So we'll be like your ultimate gut guide for 2025 or something. You can download that. Here's where. Then we've got their email list, and they've subscribed to marketing options, and
Cool. Let's talk about the other growth tactics that you've built into the system.
Yeah.
What would be another high value one for people to look at? Would it be the thumbnail testing that you've done?
It's kind of an interesting story, actually. Discovering that initially was when the CEO of ZOE was kind of grooming me to come over and do this, as my only thing. I'm not sure if it was part of the same tactic, but got added to a chain with Stephen Bartlett, who said, hey, it's in our interest. So he's an investor in ZOE.
Yeah.
And so saying it's in our interests now that you guys know everything we know. And so we went and hung out for the day at the DOAC studio and hung out with those guys, and it was awesome. And it was funny because a lot of the stuff you're like, yeah, we know this. But there were like, a couple of tidbits. And I think that the big one was thumbnail testing. And so this is pretty widely known now. But essentially, the thumbnail is the highest point of leverage, right? It's the first thing that people see. So if you can get more people to click, it's a massive opportunity so you should put time into getting that right. So before things go onto YouTube, we'll do 10 or so different thumbnails, and they will go out as ads on Facebook, which say, you can look on our Facebook library if you want, and they say, episode coming out next week. And then actually when you click them, it'll take you to a splash page, which asks you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. So we're not losing, we only spend a little bit of money. So I think we spend is it like a $5 testing each one? So we spend like 50 quid a week.
Yeah.
So it's quite small, small, but the impact is absolutely massive.
Do you put the same spend on every one pretty much and then go off click through or?
We go off click through rate, but we actually do it with, so Meta post a couple of years ago changed this kind of AI model where it actually allocates the spend itself. So we used to do it the pure, which is probably slightly truer way.
Yeah.
But it's quicker to do it that way. And I think it probably comes to the same conclusions. In fact, we tested it and it does all the time. So yeah.
Okay.
So that's the nuance if anyone knows how to use Meta Business Manager, which is a total bitch.
It was funny because Jonas is sat behind the camera there and he swears by the old school method still. And I keep telling him, no, AI is good, man. AI is good.
Well, I rate Jonas for that. But we have actually
we want to be, we're robust in our scientific approach to it.
Good on
still.
you guys. I don't know that it makes any difference.
Okay. So what did you find there? Did you find anything in terms of developing the thumbnails from what they were to what they are now?
The big one was faces really matter.
Okay.
Yeah. So after sort of doing loads of different like headlines and stuff, we were like, okay, what if we just do the same ones, but then same headline, but then we do an extra set with a slightly different expression on the face. Massive.
Yeah.
Also how much you zoom in on the face. So you want your face to like take up a big portion of the thumbnail. People are just drawn to faces. Eyes connect with eyes. You just can't help it. So the bigger you make them, the more powerful. I'm sort of the theory. I don't know if this is like true or backed by data or whether it's just my like belief, but I feel like keep it like five or six words is pretty as far as you want to go.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's because of the way, if you almost think of someone's brain having a frame rate, I feel like I can read 6 words in a thought, but any more than that, it's like I'm having to do another
100%.
thought,
Yeah.
So
it's got to be scannable.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a quick one from me to say I love building this show and I love building this community of listeners to Creator Playbooks, but I'd love to hear more from you. So please drop a comment. Let me know what you think of this week's episode and who you'd like to hear from in the future. And I'll make sure I respond to every single one. I'd love to hear from you. We've also found that images on them.
Yeah.
If you look at Stephen's the last couple of weeks, he's now found that.
Okay.
That having like an image there as well, just to support the story.
Yeah.
And then with some clients, we also found having the hand in there. Have you got that?
I know about that one. Yeah, for sure. So that's actually we were suggested that early on from one of our performance marketers.
Yeah.
He was like, trust, if you want to win on Meta ads, just put a hand in there. And so we'd experimented with a bit of that. Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
Have you done anything else or anything that hasn't worked that's gone wrong?
Yeah, actually, interestingly, on that day that we spent with Stephen, there were two takeaways. One was the thumbnail testing, which was an absolute game changer and amazing. The other was this tactic, which was to send spend from Meta to the YouTube video in the first hour. Yeah. Because the idea being that, on YouTube, when a lot is dictated when you launch the video. If it starts to get early traction, then YouTube's like, oh, this is good, show it to more people. And so the idea being that if you then engineer that from Meta, it's like pouring gasoline on the fire. Anyway, we spent about 10 grand doing it. Doesn't do anything. Basically, I think it's a really good story from Stephen and that, and it actually definitely worked for them once, but there was detail and nuance in I'm not saying the story's not true, to be clear. Yeah. There's just a lot of nuance in the story. So when they did it, it was a guy in South Africa. Yeah. It kind of found an audience of people in South Africa, which you wouldn't have found before. And so that was we didn't understand that nuance. We just thought, okay, chuck £1,000 at it. It will probably help it pick up. Doesn't work. But
I guess the core principle is just always be running experiments.
Absolutely.
Do you do that? Do you have like one experiment you're running at a time, or? one area that you're trying to improve constantly, or like how do you think about that process of continuous improvement in the team and experimentation?
Yeah. So you know what? We used to be so much better than this than we are. And then my scope really expanded in the company, and then everything got bigger. And I think we've got, honestly, we've definitely got worse at it. But yeah, we we've just got people have been put on other stuff. But yeah, we used to always do that. And so we would just have a weekly team meeting, which is, I think, again, it's the kind of stuff I find interesting. Don't know if anyone else does, but like, if you run a company or any kind of thing, I feel like your weekly meeting should be like your it's like the engine room, right?
Yeah.
And so on one of the items that we'd hit every single item. Steve Jobs does the same thing. He never let anyone else take over organizing the Monday agenda.
Yeah.
He would never let that job, because he was like, this is the engine room of Apple. So he owned that forever. And you just bash through every item and you make sure you never miss one. And one of the items was just like, what's the experiment for this week? And yeah, like that spawned things like that CTA thing. Sam, who used to be in my team, he's great at this kind of stuff. So he would take away, have a hypothesis. How do we prove it? Let's see. And then come back and just have like a, deck or something next week. And we'd be like, wow, cool. And then we build it into the machine. Again, systemize to optimize, right? So then we go in and we tweak the SOPs, like the software, to say, okay, we built that step in. And I love this stuff.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Any other growth stuff?
Yeah.
Experiments, things that went well, things that didn't go well that you'd recommend people try or avoid?
Yeah. So I think something that's that worked super well, and we still do. And just like, I'm not affiliated with this company. I totally should be, actually. I'm now thinking maybe I can I'm thinking that
we'll get the affiliate sorted before it comes out. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So currently not affiliated with this company. Maybe I will be before this comes out. Podroll.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what they do is they place in other shows, episode 2 will be your show.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if someone jumps onto their Spotify feed, for say Peter Attia, and then they look at that, and then the second one is like, it's kind of clearly an ad, but it's in the context of the feed. Episode 2 will be one of our episodes.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's like a kind of like an in-feed swap, but automated, and yeah, it's wicked. It's really good. And we've done a lot of paid experiments, and that is by far the cheapest way to get new audio listeners in terms of paid. Wow. So I would definitely recommend that for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you're basically just doing feed swaps there. And then I guess, again, if your core infrastructure in the episode is set up to get them to subscribe, then you've got an organic engine of sorts there, paid, but like then you're making sure they actually convert through the content. That's cool.
Exactly. And then you can pick what kind of, it's really nice because you can pick your kind of audience vertical. You're like, well, people in that podcast they're going to like what we're selling, and it's really good.
Let's talk about the ZOE funnel and how this fuels the business.
Yeah.
How do you think about it? Is part of it just building that brand connection and awareness with existing customer base? And is the other side of it bringing new customers in?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely both. So if we touched on already, I always talk about, I use the term of a trust unlock. And it's like the idea of, if you have trust, all things become easier.
Yeah.
And so I feel like podcasting is unrivaled in terms of like the trust building, like medium. I think it's the one. Like there's no other opportunity to have such a long time with people and in a human way. Conversations, like there's also kind of releasing oxytocin as well. People are properly bonding with your brand effectively over really long spaces of time. So building trust and then building brand as well. So brand is like hard to build. And then if everyone's going, what does that mean? I like the definition of saying like, it's the thing that people say that you are in an elevator. If asked, might be a more pithy way to say that, but so yeah, building, like positioning yourself as who you are. And so then at that point, maybe down the line when someone thinks, I've got this need and your product fulfills it, then they know where to go because you have imprinted on their mind forever. And I think that's like one of the main differences between brand versus product and performance marketing. So like with like performance marketing, you're trying to get someone to convert like with the thing right now. But with brand, you're building mental availability in people's minds. And then, so at that point of a decision of like, I've got this need and your product being the solution, you're there, you're trusted, top of mind, basically. And so we're, building brand and building trust. And then so so I've sort of dug into the building brand side. And then the trust thing is why I think it's really important not to take all the credit with like, with sales is like, ultimately it's probably the performance marketing that's getting them over the edge. But the fact that they've built so much trust through the podcast makes the whole thing work better and ultimately reduces your acquisition cost. And actually I know you had Alex Hormozi's marketing guy on here a while ago. In one of his books, he talks about this time when he decided to pivot his organic strategy to do something new. And his organic strategy, he's kind of famous for like high volume of stuff. So it's quite a big machine. And he pivoted like the objectives of that and the kind of the content, the comms objectives to be something about something else. And all his Facebook ads flopped. And, and they were like, what the hell's happened? And they pointed it back. And you could tell like, our old CMO used to say marketing is a team sport. And I love that because it is like you build a machine with loads of touch points and like, more touch points working in unison is better than fewer. And this, I think, is an interesting one as well in terms of psychology. You're more likely to trust something you see in a few different contexts. So it feels more believable. If you see a billboard, you hear a thing, you see an ad on Facebook, you feel like, wow, this thing is like, it's everywhere. It must be massive. It must be like something to trust. And so, marketing is definitely a team game.
Is there any metric that you're tracking or the business asks you to track to prove the conversion or prove the value of the podcast? Are you tracking lead magnet signups? Are you tracking conversion pixels, like things like this?
It's the latter, So we use a thing called Magellan AI. I think there's a few of these around now. But we're tracking sales modeled, and that is basically a pixel tracking situation. That's as deeply as I understand it.
So basically, it's tracking who's listened to the podcast and then followed through to convert on the site.
Exactly. By their IP address, I think.
And it's quite an expensive product, isn't it, Zoe? This is like a premium product.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I think that's what's a big part of why this is so valuable is the product's like 300 quid. And we're causing a lot of conversions there. So it generates a lot of revenue.
I guess that shows that if you build a premium content product, do you think that of the podcast as part of the funnel or as a product offering it from the business? Like how does it sit for you?
So it sits as a product, for sure. However, that doesn't neglect that it's part of the funnel. But in terms of like you've got to like use the terms and the frames that are useful. And for us, it's 100% a product. It's one of our free offerings that we give people. And then, those free offerings deliver value and build reciprocity and trust and build up to people thinking, I'll buy something from you as well.
This podcast is produced by 7X Content, which is my full-service podcast agency. We work with the world's leading brands and creators to create incredible shows, and you can check out our roster at 7xcontent.com. If you'd like to make an incredible show or take your existing one to the next level, we'd love to hear from you. Now, let's get back into this week's episode. One thing we haven't touched on is short form. How do you think about that? Is that important to you for the show or...
We use short form on Instagram. We've got a big Instagram as well. We're posting clips every single week. It's without doubt making a significant impact on the growth of the podcast, no doubt. Have I done a very good job of measuring it? Not really. And the other thing is, what's, I guess, interesting thing that we don't do is shorts. And so when we were considering this a while back, and caveat that we actually maybe should start to reconsider this now, but at the time we did a big deep dive into other channels in the health space to see if anyone was winning on shorts. And there was a lot of the people where we were sort of serving a similar audience or having a similar value proposition, it just wasn't working. And I think it tied in with other things that we know that this is people's health. So they're actually willing to put in the time to read longer stuff, to listen to longer things. So shorts are just something we decided not to do. And, actually, university, it looked like there just wasn't much appetite for it. Now, the other thing that we do is like 10-minute clips. And they can work pretty well. And I think that's like you find a different audience for sure. There are a load of, I've spoken to just, like N of one type beliefs, I guess, like speaking to friends who say, oh yeah, I only listen to clips on, or I only watch clips on YouTube or podcasts. I've never watched podcasts on there. So it's kind of interesting. You're like, okay, so there's some people there. And we put those on the channel. And actually we've just transitioned a couple of months ago. You might be able to speak way more to this because I think we were kind of late to the party here. We've got a new channel, which is we're mostly putting clips on 10 to 15 minute clips, but we're also probably going to put some other stuff around the same time frame.
I get you.
But the clips don't perform. They definitely have value, and a few of them perform, but in general, we believe that having it on a separate channel is going to work a lot better. So I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
I think they're very, like you say, they're very valuable for hitting people in a more easy to consume 10, 15 minute chunk, which works really well on YouTube. It is the dominant format, is 10-minute clips. So it works, but as you say, it can confuse the channel, because if you want your main format to be these 1 hour episodes, then if you start piling up your feed with these 10 minutes, then you may be confusing the purity of who's subscribed. So it can make sense to have it on a secondary channel. And I think the other side of it is more of a volume game.
Right.
So people like Lex Friedman will be creating like 10, 20, 10-minute clips from a show, and just churning them out. And I think that's because it is a bit more of a volume thing. And it's more shots on goal. The only person who I think does it really well is Chris Williamson, because he will use it as a promotional tool. So he'll get his guests to talk on a wide topic and then release 2 10-minute clips before that episode comes out.
On the same channel.
On the same channel. And it drives a lot of awareness of the fact that a big guest is coming on. But he specifically chooses the topics to be big open topics that he expects to do well in that 10-minute format.
Oh, amazing. So I'm going to go and listen to one of those when I get home.
Yeah, he does a nice job of it. And I think another nice thing to think about is maybe like thinking of that 10-minute thing as an adjacent piece of content before the show or alongside it. So the overlap, they do quickfire questions with a guest walking around outside before the main interview.
Sure.
So again, it's like an easier point of contact for you to come across the episode and then go and listen to the full thing or get excited about it. So but it's a tough format, I think, to have on your main channel. Let's talk about the team you need to produce a show like this. How do you set up your team?
So let's talk about the structure, and I think we've probably not got enough time to talk about the nuances of getting amazing people. That's definitely a bigger topic. But in terms of how to set it up, the structure that we have and that I've found over doing, quite a few before, is we basically have a production coordinator. And so they kind of own, they've got like the kind of core KPIs of like, is the thing going to go out at the right time every single week? Ultimately, that's like the final thing. So they own that. And so all of the bits in between are kind of their responsibility to take hold of. So have the production coordinator. And then we have the long form editor, who spends about 2.5, 3 days a week. Then we have, and we have 2 different edits as well, as we met, 2 different intros, but also 2 different edits. So the long form video one happens first, and then we actually do another edit because you can chop a bit more in audio without kind of jittery video. So do a second one, deliver that as well. And then we have the video trailer editor. Does about 2 days a week as well. People are always mind blown how long it takes, but well, there's no shortcuts at the moment. And then we have the mix and sound designer. And then I think that's probably, I'm from like an audio mastering background, so I'm a little bit obsessed with that stuff, and I'm not willing to make trade-offs again. So that person does the sound design of the audio intro, mix volume levels, and then the same on the video one. He actually doesn't do the sound design for the video. The trailer editor does that, but then the mix engineer does the mix basically. So,
but what about, so like in terms of then the actual people putting it out and distributing it?
Yeah.
Do you have like a YouTube producer or like a producer who is in charge of the titles, thumbnails, that kind of thing, and then like a social person who does the social channels, or is that all one person? Or
so putting it out in headlines and thumbnails, that's all the production coordinator.
Yeah.
Then we have a social person. Yeah. And then because we sort of think of social as a slightly different unit. Our social media manager owns all of that, and all the processes are interlinked, but she owns all of that.
Would she make the clips and everything as well?
Yeah, she has a freelancer to help her who sits under her.
And the production coordinator comes up with the titles and thumbnails?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And actually that's a very collaborative thing with me throughout, because I'm kind of like, so I'm head of content, and so it's a more of a strategic role. However, obviously when we're coming up with our content strategy, that ultimately is kind of saying, how are we going to package this, which pretty much means headlines and thumbnails and like the topic of the thing. And so it's very collaborative. That it's very high impact, high leverage kind of work. So
And would you I presume you come up with that before the show, before you record the show?
Yeah. So we've got a really beautiful template actually for how we create our pitches. So from headline to what's in the episode to grading the guest, the frameworks, whatever. And I guess actually I could share that with you as something to download in the show notes if people are interested. Yeah,
that sounds great. Really interesting.
So when we're kind of thinking about these, and like we bring in, on these kind of, when we're thinking like plan for the quarter, for example, we'll bring Tim in, we'll bring Jonathan in, we'll have these massive brainstorms, and then we'll sort of then get more tactical as things go on.
But essentially you got that kind of core like production team.
Yeah.
And then kind of just sitting above it is you, who's kind of maybe thinking about the higher leverage decisions. And then you're doing planning every 3 months with the hosts, and just thinking about what the next slate of episodes are going to look like and the guests you want to have on and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a guest booker?
That's the production coordinator as well.
Wow.
Yeah. This person does so much. But I mean, like, this comes from the model of in our old... when we had a podcast company with loads of shows, we found that one production coordinator could run 2 shows, and they're just they basically piece everything together, and they book guests as well. But it's pretty easy to book guests in art. So you hear from other shows that all this like these stories of hustle to get this guest. It took so much, whatever. We're just like, often these people are scientists, right? We're like, hey, do you want to have an opportunity to like speak to 1 million people? They're like, pretty easy. So it doesn't take that long.
It's not celebrities. It's not kind of like relationship based. It's more it's
just straightforward. We do have a lot of relationships, but it's not hard to book guests ultimately in our case.
Awesome, Rich. I've learned so much. We'll definitely get a hold of a couple of your documents, as many as you'll give away, and we'll give them away as a lead magnet in the show notes. But thank you so much for doing this. You've shared like so much wisdom, insight, frameworks, hard earned as well. And it's a phenomenal show. I listen to it regularly, and I can see why it's so successful, because it's not just the product of all these frameworks and growth hacks and all the rest of it. It is just great content. So yeah, congrats on everything you built and thanks for sharing it with us.
Mate, thanks for having me. It's been awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, why not check out two of my favorites, one with Grace Andrews from Diary of a CEO and the second with Daniel Priestley on building a personal brand. These are two of my absolute favorite episodes and I think you're going to love them. Let me know what you think in the comments and I'll see you next time.